Imagine waking before sunrise. There is no warning, no time to prepare. Then the ground beneath your home begins moving with the force of a magnitude 7.7 earthquake. Within minutes, roads are blocked, buildings are damaged, power disappears, and thousands of people are forced into the streets. That is what happened on Indonesia's island of Flores. And the earthquake may have exposed something bigger than the destruction itself. How fragile is a modern society when the ground suddenly stops cooperating? On Saturday, August 15th, a powerful magnitude 7.7 earthquake struck off the coast of Flores in eastern Indonesia. The earthquake was relatively shallow. And that matters. A shallow earthquake can transfer enormous energy into the surrounding area. Across East Nusa Tenggara, homes were damaged, roads were blocked by landslides, communications were disrupted, power outages complicated rescue operations, and thousands of residents were forced to leave their homes. At least 53 people had been confirmed dead in the first major rescue phase. By August 17th, that number had risen to at least 68. More than 200 people were reported injured. Around 5,000 people were pushed into temporary shelters, and more than 100 homes were damaged, according to later reports. But the numbers tell only part of the story, because after the main earthquake came another problem. The ground did not stop moving. More than 1,500 aftershocks were recorded. Only a fraction was strongly felt, but every tremor created another moment of uncertainty. For survivors sleeping outside, a smaller earthquake was not simply a geological event. It was a warning. Could the next one bring another building down? Could another landslide block the road? Could rescuers reach the villages still cut off? And could the infrastructure people depended upon continue functioning? These questions reveal why earthquakes are not simply disasters measured by magnitude. They are tests of systems, and Flores was about to face one of those tests. Pause on a map of Indonesia. Indonesia sits along the Pacific Ring of Fire. It is one of the most seismically active regions on Earth. Earthquakes are not unusual here, but that does not make them harmless. A population can become accustomed to earthquakes without becoming immune to them. Because the real danger is not simply how strong the earthquake is. It is where it strikes, how deep it is, what sits above the fault, how strong the buildings are, and how quickly emergency services can respond. The Flores earthquake demonstrated this brutally. The shaking damaged homes and public infrastructure across multiple areas. In some places, the problem was not just collapsed structures. It was isolation. A village can survive an earthquake. But what happens if the road leading to that village disappears? What happens if the nearest hospital is damaged? What happens if communications fail? What happens if electricity goes out? Suddenly, the disaster becomes a logistics problem, and logistics can determine who receives help first. After a major earthquake, every minute matters. Search teams need to move, ambulances need to move, food needs to move, water needs to move, medical supplies need to move. But landslides and damaged roads can turn a short journey into an impossible one. That is exactly what rescuers faced in parts of Flores. Some of the hardest-hit areas were difficult to reach. Heavy machinery had to be brought in. Roads had to be cleared. Aircraft and helicopters became increasingly important. And this creates a dangerous feedback loop. The earthquake damages infrastructure. Damaged infrastructure slows rescue operations. Slower rescue operations mean vulnerable people wait longer. And the longer people wait, the greater the humanitarian pressure becomes. This is why a disaster does not end when the shaking stops. In many cases, the second phase has only just begun, and it creates a question that is often ignored when the earthquake first appears on the news. What happens after the cameras leave? Because rebuilding can take months, sometimes years. Homes must be repaired, schools must reopen, medical facilities must be restored, roads must be rebuilt, businesses must restart, families must replace lost possessions, and communities must recover from psychological trauma. The earthquake may last less than a minute. Its consequences can last for years. Then there are the aftershocks. Nearly 1,600 were recorded following the main earthquake. Most were smaller, but magnitude alone does not determine fear. For someone standing beside a damaged building, a smaller earthquake can feel enormous. A wall that survived the first shock may not survive the second. A landslide that almost happened may finally happen. A cracked road may collapse. And a rescue operation that was already difficult can become even more dangerous. This is why aftershocks are not simply geological statistics. They change human behavior. People stop sleeping indoors. Families gather outside. Hospitals move patients outdoors. Businesses remain closed. Schools cannot reopen normally. And uncertainty spreads through communities. The earthquake has created a new reality. People no longer know whether the next tremor will be harmless. There was another frightening possibility. A tsunami warning was issued after the earthquake. The warning was later lifted, but waves were still recorded. But instead of a relatively remote part of Flores, imagine it striking directly beneath a densely populated metropolitan area. The equation would change immediately. More buildings, more roads, more hospitals, more businesses, more people, more economic activity. The same geological force could produce a radically different outcome. This is the uncomfortable lesson. Natural disasters are partly about nature, but they are also about exposure. A magnitude 7.7 earthquake is one event, but millions of people living above vulnerable infrastructure can transform that event into something much larger. Now imagine the first 24 hours. Roads are blocked, hospitals are overwhelmed, power is interrupted, communications become unreliable. People cannot reach relatives, supplies cannot reach communities. Markets begin reacting, businesses close, workers cannot travel, and governments have to make decisions with incomplete information. Where should rescue teams go first? Which roads should be reopened? Which communities are most isolated? Which hospitals can still function? Which buildings are safe? The first hours are a race against time, but the following days become a race against exhaustion. And then comes the economic problem. People cannot work if their homes are damaged. Businesses cannot operate if customers disappear. Tourism can decline. Agricultural production can be interrupted. Construction costs rise. Government spending increases. But the final cost is not yet known. The rebuilding has barely begun. And the question is no longer simply, why did the earthquake happen? The deeper question is this: what happens when a society is tested by a disaster larger than the systems designed to protect it? Because earthquakes cannot be prevented, but catastrophic consequences can sometimes be reduced. And that may be the real lesson emerging from Flores. The ground will move again. The only question is whether we will be ready when it does. Flores, Indonesia, August 2026. A magnitude 7.7 earthquake, thousands displaced, dozens dead. And a reminder that the strength of a disaster is measured not only by the earthquake, but by the resilience of everything built above it.